in this country that we cannot sort out any help for our musicians in touring in Europe.
My Lords, I really welcome this opportunity to discuss the regional distribution of Arts Council of England funding, and I want to thank the noble Lords Storey and McNally for the chance to raise some concerns. First of all, of course, no arts organisation should feel entitled to perpetual state funding as a right. It's totally appropriate to review and shake up which projects and whose artistic output merits public funds. But what is so striking in this funding round is that the criteria does not even pretend to be based on artistic merit at all, but seems to me to be purely political, even more crassly geographic. Of course, the DCMS instruction to redistribute funding away from London has some winners, and I'm delighted for both Blackburn and Bradford's museums and art galleries and the Barnsley-based brass bands of England who receive funding for the first time, and many others. Good luck to them. And as I'm from the north, it's great that we might say that we'll support the arts in the north. No problem with that. But I am slightly anxious about the overall trajectory that reveals a patronising attitude to northern audiences and potentially a Philistine attitude to the arts, nowhere better exemplified than in the plight of the English National Opera. I, like others, and in this I uncharacteristically fully agree with the noble Lord Vesey, was shocked by the Arts Council's treatment of the English National Opera. Effectively, its chorus and orchestras are being closed down, they're being sacked. When the Arts Council announced the move, it did so with an ungracious and high-handed ultimatum, and I just want to quote it. The ENO's future is in their hands. We require English National Opera to move to another part of England if they wish to continue to receive support from us. But to note, that financial offer that they've been given is actually only half their usual budget. So I want to ask if the Arts Council think that those in the north don't deserve full funding of the arts and should make do with the cut-price pound shop version of the English National Opera. Such cultural vandalism feels like virtue signalling devoid of serious strategic thinking, forced through at speed. When Birmingham Royal Ballet relocated from London in the 1980s, it was undertaken with 5 years' consultation with audiences, staff and its new venue home. But there's been no consultation in this instance. The move has to be completed in 5 months. The Arts Council hasn't even bothered to consider where ENO might take up residence. It just has to go up north. One venue that might work in terms of size would be Factory International, Manchester's soon-to-be multi-million-pound arts venue, itself a recipient of Arts Council funding. But no one asked them, and they've made it clear they won't change their contemporary focus to accommodate the new tenant. Artistic Director John McGrath has stated its goals are, quote, new works, not the traditional opera repertoire. Well, what about the Lyric in Leeds, the largest stage in England outside of London? But oh, no, that hosts the wonderful Opera North. And indeed, the whole ENO Move North venture seems to me to be a slap in the face for Opera North. Its director, Richard Mantle, points out, quote, it's not a new idea to have a large professional opera company performing opera in the North. We've been doing it for 40 years. But somehow, in the debates about opera prompted by this ENO issue, we maybe get a hint of what the Arts Council views are on both opera and its relationship to northern audiences, or to audiences in general. Darren Henley, the Chief Executive of the Arts Council, claims that opera needs to change to satisfy a new generation of audiences who he claims wants opera presented in new ways, opera in car parks, opera in pubs, opera on your tablet. He suggests that such new ideas may seem heretic to traditionalists. Well, they do seem pretty heretic to me. They aren't novel or radical ideas, but they are cheap and second-rate gimmicks as far as I'm concerned, and they show a disparaging view of audiences and the art form. The premise seems to be the cliché that traditional opera, including some of the greatest music ever composed, is only appealing to the fusty rich upper classes and the privileged. I'm reminded of the incident last July when the Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab accused Angela Rayner of being a champagne socialist for going to Glyndebourne, as though she was betraying somehow the working classes, forgetting, I assume, that opera is historically a popular art form enjoyed by millions of people of all social classes all over the world. Being priced out by expensive tickets or not being able to afford to get the train to London is a problem, but it's very different to the snobbish chippiness that seems to imbue the political and artistic establishment's implicit prejudice that the plebs won't be interested in or get high art. This attitude was on display recently when the BBC announced that in order to attract viewers from lower socio-economic DE groups, it will make lighter dramas and comedies and sports documentaries and use, quote, factual entertainment competitive formats. Yuck. If you're poor, it seems, you'll be given poor quality programmes. Maybe that's too cynical, yet the Arts Council Director of Music, Claire Merrow-Nelson, has justified attacks on the ENO, ironically, as we know, set up nearly 100 years ago with the mission to bring opera to the masses, a noble cause. But no, the music director says that there's insufficient growth in audiences for traditionally staged large-scale opera. And this seems to be a real bean counter's approach to the value of the arts. As acclaimed soprano Daniela Dedis notes, do we need to sell as many tickets as the O2 to be recognised? Should we declare war on everything that isn't mainstream enough? Or all we're going to be left with is reality TV? She then pleads with those who run the arts and politics to recognise opera's value as art per se. But that seems a forlorn hope, because valuing artistic excellence is often itself treated as an elitist endeavour by too many in arts funding and policy circles. Dating back to the Blair years and the setting up of the DCMS in the 1990s, arts organisations have been told they must justify their funding using worthy social and economic criteria. Arts for art's sake arguments have been too often traduced as arcane, old-fashioned, self-indulgent. A focus on aesthetics is assumed to alienate popular appeal. So arts organisations have been forced by funding carrots and sticks to show their worth as useful instruments in social and political change. Many in the arts world, it's true, have over recent years embraced this mission. Orchestras stressing they're good for health and well-being, theatres pining on their role as community hubs. Often these drivers are defensive expressions and express an existential crisis in arts organisations about their role. Museums and galleries and classical music have all in recent years indulged in angst-ridden introspection about their alleged colonial roots, their whiteness, and diversity and inclusion targets means outward engagement projects obsess over the age, skin colour and gender of audiences rather than the artistic quality of its output. The effect of all this is, it seems to me, a cumbersome politicisation of the arts world, too much artivism and propagandising, an existential crisis about the role of arts. No surprise then that Just Stop Oil activists feel free to desecrate artistic masterpieces to save the planet, art is secondary considered to politics. And all this emanates from the way that artistic excellence has been squeezed out of arts funding. If you look at the bureaucratic Arts Council development programmes, drenched in acronym-laden managerial speak, the intrinsic worth of art is barely visible. Utilitarian rules a day. The Creative Local Growth Fund, the Cultural Development Fund, the Great Place Scheme, all focus on local economic growth, unlocking productivity and everything. And we do need that urgently to happen, but that should have been in the Autumn White Statement and not be forced on the arts. I, as I've gone on about dumbing down, want to finish by just giving you all a bit of homework, or the Minister a bit of homework. I would suggest that the Minister and the Arts Council reads about the artistic tastes of ordinary people by reading The Intellectual Life of the British Working Class by Jonathan Rose to understand the rich history of autodidacts thriving on intellectually challenging arts and literature, but also the new pamphlet by artist and art critic Alexander Adams, Abolish the Arts Council, critiquing some of these instrumentalising themes, and which is selling out as we speak as stocking fillers, but it's a good read.
My Lords,